What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. We are wrapping up 2024 and I'm gonna kick off with my 10 least favorite movies of this year. I have a couple more I'm gonna try to squeeze in and then I'll do my favorite movies of the year. So let's get into my least favorite. I'm recording this on December 30th and these are my current least favorite movies based off of my Letterboxd account. See the link below if you wanna follow me. All right, so let's go into number 10. This one was Elevation. When I saw the trailer for this, it seemed interesting. It's definitely had the feel of a lot of movies that I'd recently watched, especially Arcadian with Nicolas Cage. Just kind of had a similar feel to that. But this is set into the future where these alien creatures have taken over Earth, but the kicker is they can only go so high. So people are like basically surviving living high up in the mountains, whereas if they drop below a certain elevation, then they're in danger of getting killed by these aliens. I think the idea was there, but the execution not so much. I mean, this played like a video game, very predictable, surprisingly set up for some sequels potentially. So I don't know. This is one of those, like, maybe if they make a sequel, it could come back and surprise us, but overall just wasn't too impressed by this. Coming up next is Kraven the Hunter. This is pretty much the final Sony Marvel movie to wrap up 2024. Kraven is apparently going to wrap up the Sony's like Spider-Man-less Spider-Man movies, so basically the Spider-Man villains. Yeah, this was just not very good at all. I think there were some cool action sequences in here that made this a little bit more enjoyable watch than like Madam Web, but all in all, like, this just felt very rushed. I mean, this movie got pushed back as well, and just the bad effects, just the not great story, just the poor use of characters, trying to make one of the most popular Spider-Man villains this anti-hero, it just didn't work, and I was pretty disappointed in it. All right, coming up next on my list is Strangers Chapter 1. I almost toyed with putting this as like my most disappointing watch of the year. Man, this movie was just not good. I mean, this was a play-by-play of like the first movie and wasn't scary, super predictable. I mean, and this is also one of those that's supposed to be split up into 3 movies as a whole, which I thought all 3 were gonna be released this year, but I guess maybe the negative feedback pushed back on that one. So there should be a trailer out for part 2 or chapter 2 or however they want to call it, but yeah, a lot of ground to make up here. All right, next up on my list is Imaginary. So I actually saw this one when I went to South by Southwest beginning of the year. This was kind of like, this was in theaters, wasn't shown at South by, but I got there early, had a night to kill, so I went and watched this one. This was not great at all. A Blumhouse film. Again, had some very interesting ideas. You can see they're trying to set this up to be the next big kind of, you know, series of movies. But man, this lacked in terms of being scary. This is a slow drag. A lot of the bigger moments you would see in the trailer. And then the ending just kind of goes into this realm of like, you can see what they're wanting to do with it, but nothing just quite worked for me there. All right, next up is a movie called Switch Up. Switch Up is a movie I saw at South by Southwest, and I've mentioned this in a previous video where I talked about everything I saw at South by. Look, this is a very sweet movie. This is a very Lifetime-esque movie, but just wasn't very good. There's probably an audience for this. I wouldn't say I'm part of that audience, but again, it's a sweet movie. It's touching. It has some story, but I think everything else is just kind of just not very well done with this one. All right, next up is The Deliverance. This is I guess you could call it a religious horror movie. Yeah, saw this one on Netflix. Saw a lot of people chatting about it, so I was kind of excited to check this out. Very interesting cast, especially with Glenn Close in this. But yeah, not up to par. I didn't find this scary at all. I didn't really find it interesting. This was just a very blueprint horror movie that just didn't do much at all. Next up is yet another horror movie. This is Tarot. Early on in the year, pretty impressive cast. Essentially, they find a deck of tarot cards and, of course, find your fate, and they're kind of these things that come to life. Yeah, I mean, this was a play-by-play predictable. You could see where this was going, which kind of sucks for a fairly strong cast. A lot of the cast are, newer actors that we're seeing in a lot of bigger movies. Also hard to tell when this movie was shot. This feels like this was shot years ago and then finally got a theatrical release. Didn't find this scary at all. Didn't really care for the creatures. Wasn't super scared by them in any way. They all looked the same. I think they could have spent a lot more time trying to add, making them a little bit more creepier, done something to elevate this, because not good at all. And then after this one was Madam Web. Madam Web, surprisingly, was the bottom of my list for quite some time, but there are two others that I found worse than Madam Web. Madam Web, yet again, is another movie set in the Spider-Man world. Madam Web is a sometimes hero, sometimes villain in the comics, but this one just not good at all. Madam Web, from my understanding, has always been an older woman who basically has this, she can see into the future, see glimpses. We're also bringing in other spider heroines, which they don't get as much of that cool screen time. A lot of those scenes you see in the trailer, and just a lot of decisions in this with the story just didn't quite work for me. Again, this is some pretty cool characters in the Spider-Man world, but just didn't execute them at all, and it's hard to tell, are we gonna see these characters again or not? We don't know quite yet. We'll just kind of see what happens as Sony moves forward with their Spider-Man movies going into next year. All right, the next one up is Under Paris. This is one of the many big shark movies we got in 2024. Surprisingly, quite a few shark attack movies, but this movie, I honestly don't know if I finished it. This is how bad it was. You're in Paris and people are basically stuck in a situation with a giant shark. The graphics were really bad. The story just wasn't interesting to hold my attention. Again, I don't know why. It's just not the greatest movie if you're a fan of these big shark or big animal style movies. The last on my list as my least favorite movie of the year is Afraid. This was an AI based movie of a family that's kind of working on new startup and gets pulled into testing out this AI, and this movie was just all over the place. A lot of different ideas that just didn't really work at all in the end. I think it left more confusion than discussion points. As someone that works in technology, there was a lot of things that I could see and agree, yeah, I can see where this is going to go in real life and things like that. But just the general execution around this, again, wasn't scary at all. I think this was maybe meant to kind of show you a world that we may be getting in the near future and try to heighten your fears of just AI in general. But yeah, this was not a strong movie at all. Just weird performances all around, a weird story that just didn't do much at all. So that is my 10 least favorite movies of the year. Going into, I'll add one more. I would say probably my most disappointing watch of the year, I would say, would be A Quiet Place Day One. I'm a fan of A Quiet Place and Quiet Place Part 2. Thought both of those were excellent. And I want to see more within the Quiet Place worlds and more stories. Originally, Jeff Nichols was supposed to be behind this and then left it to go work on another movie. And A Quiet Place, we're familiar with the general story, the creatures, the aliens. Having a day one setting, following new people was really cool. But the story just was really bizarre. And it's one I wanted so much more from it, being a franchise, a story that I'm starting to really enjoy. So that would go down as my most disappointing watch of the year. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Apologies for the voice, and it's just that time of the year. Kids are sick. I'm trying not to get sick, so I'll try to edit this the best that I can. But let me know in the comments what were movies that you did not enjoy or wanted more from. Would love to know. Maybe there's something I missed that maybe I'll check out if I have some downtime, just see if I agree. But yeah, thank you so much for checking this video out, and look forward to my next video where I'll talk about my top 10 favorite movies of the year. We'll see you soon.